You're alive. The waitress whispered it so softly that Emily Harrington almost missed the words, but the look in Claire Bennett's eyes made her stop breathing for a moment. The coffee shop around them continued as if nothing had happened. Cups clinked. Silverware clicked. A refrigerator hummed behind the counter. Outside, rain tapped gently against the windows of the small Boston diner. Emily slowly lowered her menu. "Excuse me." Claire didn't answer. She simply stared at her, pale and completely still, as though she had just seen someone walk out of a photograph. "Do I know you?" Emily asked. Claire swallowed. "No, then why did you say that?" "Because I know your face." Emily gave a nervous smile. "A lot of people recognize my father." Claire shook her head. "Not your father." She leaned closer. "You." 3 short words hung between them. Emily felt a strange chill move through her, even though the diner was warm. She had come in alone that afternoon, wearing a simple cream sweater and jeans, hoping for 20 quiet minutes before returning to the hotel. She had not told anyone where she was. She had not used her family name. She had not even mentioned that she was Emily Harrington, only daughter of billionaire businessman Richard Harrington. 6 years earlier, America had learned that Emily Harrington was dead. The story had appeared on every major news channel. A tragic accident, a missing vehicle, a grieving father, a funeral attended by people who barely knew the young woman they claimed to mourn. Emily had lived with another name ever since. She had learned to keep her head down, to avoid cameras, to never answer questions about the past. But Claire was looking at her as if 6 years had disappeared in a single second. "Who told you I died?" Emily asked. Claire's fingers tightened around the coffee pot. "Everyone." "Then why did you say I'm alive?" Claire looked toward the front windows. Her voice became almost inaudible. "Because I was there." Emily froze. "Where?" Claire's eyes returned to hers. "The night they said you were gone." The diner suddenly felt much quieter. A truck rolled past outside, its tires whispering over wet pavement. Somewhere behind the counter, a spoon dropped into a sink. Claire placed the coffee pot down with trembling hands. "You need to leave." Emily stared at her. "Why?" Claire hesitated. "Because if they find out you're here, they'll come looking." Emily's heart began to race. "Who?" Claire looked at her for several seconds, and something like fear passed across her face. Then the bell above the diner door rang. A man entered wearing a dark blue coat, carrying no umbrella despite the rain. Claire saw him first. Her expression changed instantly. Emily turned. The stranger glanced around the room, then stopped when his eyes found her. Claire whispered one final sentence. "Don't let him know you remember." And across the diner, the man slowly smiled. The man's smile lasted only a second, but Claire noticed it. So did Emily. Claire immediately picked up the coffee pot and walked toward the counter, forcing herself to look busy. Emily remained seated, her hands resting quietly on the table. She could hear the soft ticking of the clock above the kitchen door. The stranger removed his coat, glanced at the menu, and then looked back toward Emily. "Busy afternoon," he said casually. Claire did not look up. "It is usually quieter around this time." "I can see that." His voice was calm. Too calm. Emily felt a question forming in her mind, but before she could ask it, Claire appeared beside her table with a fresh cup of coffee. "You should go," Claire whispered. "Now." Emily looked toward the door. "I cannot just walk out because a stranger smiled at me." Claire lowered her voice even more. "That man knows your father." Emily's expression changed. "How?" Claire glanced over her shoulder. "I do not know, but I have seen him before." The stranger was still standing near the counter. He had not ordered anything. He was simply watching the room, as though waiting for someone. Emily slowly reached for her purse. "Claire, tell me the truth." Claire looked at her. "I am trying." "You said you were there that night." Claire nodded. "I was." "Where?" Claire took a breath. "At Harrington Manor." Emily went completely still. That name had followed her for years. The house where she had grown up. The place where she had celebrated birthdays, opened Christmas presents, and listened to her mother play piano on Sunday mornings. She had not returned there since the night everything changed. "What did you see?" Emily asked. Claire looked down at the table. "You were supposed to leave town that night." "I know, but you never did." Emily frowned. "That is not what I remember." Claire studied her face. "That is the problem." A quiet silence settled between them. Emily could hear the rain tapping against the glass. She tried to remember the night of the accident. Headlights. A long driveway. Her father standing near the front entrance. Then nothing clear. 6 years of memories seemed to have a door locked somewhere inside them. Why do I not remember? She whispered. Claire answered gently. Because someone wanted you to forget. Before Emily could respond, the stranger approached their table. Everything all right? He asked. Claire smiled politely. Perfectly fine. Emily looked at him. Do I know you? He paused. I do not think so. Then why have you been watching me? His expression remained pleasant. You look familiar. Emily almost laughed. That seems to be happening a lot today. The man nodded once and returned to the counter. Claire waited until he was several steps away. Then she reached into the pocket of her apron and placed a small photograph beneath Emily's hand. Do not look at it here, she whispered. Take it with you. Emily covered the photograph with her palm. What is it? Claire's eyes filled with quiet fear. Something I kept because I could not forget your face. Emily slipped the photograph into her purse without looking. Then the diner door opened again. This time, Ethan Carter stepped inside with his 8-year-old daughter, Lily. Ethan had no idea who Emily was. He only knew that Claire looked frightened, Emily looked confused, and the stranger near the counter seemed to be waiting for something. Ethan glanced at the three of them, then quietly moved closer to his daughter. He had learned long ago that when something felt wrong, dignity meant paying attention before speaking. Claire saw him. For the first time that afternoon, her expression softened. Then Emily felt the photograph inside her purse and wondered what could possibly be hidden inside a picture that had terrified a waitress enough to remember her for 6 years. Emily waited until the stranger turned toward the front windows before opening the photograph beneath the table. Her breath caught. It showed Harrington Manor on a summer evening 6 years earlier, the stone walls glowing beneath warm lights. Emily knew the house instantly. She knew the windows, the front steps, even the old maple tree beside the driveway. But there was something in the corner of the picture that made her fingers go cold. It was her. Not the Emily from 6 years ago. The Emily sitting in the diner that afternoon. Same face. Same dark hair. Same small silver necklace. The photograph had been taken recently. Where did you get this? She whispered. Claire looked toward the kitchen. I did not take it. Then who did? Claire hesitated. Someone who wanted me to remember that you were still alive. Ethan had noticed the change in Emily's expression from across the room. He did not stare. He simply watched, the way a father watches a child crossing a busy parking lot. Lily tugged gently at his sleeve. Dad, can we get pancakes? Ethan smiled. Of course. He guided her toward a booth near the window. Extra blueberries? Always. His voice was warm, ordinary, almost comforting against the strange tension in the room. Emily looked over for a moment. She saw a father wiping a small spot of syrup from his daughter's sleeve, listening carefully while Lily described a drawing she had made at school. There was no fear in his face, no curiosity about money, no interest in her identity, just quiet attention. Claire noticed Emily watching them. He comes here often, she whispered. Who is he? Ethan Carter. Single father. He works nearby. Emily nodded slowly. Does he know anything? No, Claire paused. And that may be why he can help. Emily looked confused. Help with what? Claire did not answer. Instead, she reached beneath the counter and brought out a folded napkin. On it was an address written in blue ink. Go there tonight, she said. Alone. Emily stared at the address. Why? Because 6 years ago, I promised someone I would give this to you if you ever came back. Emily looked up. Who? Claire's eyes lowered. Your mother. The word struck deeper than Emily expected. Her mother had died before the accident, and for years Emily had carried the ache of losing her as quietly as possible. My mother knew I would survive. Claire shook her head. She knew something was wrong. At the nearby booth, Ethan heard Lily laugh and smiled. Then he noticed the man in the blue coat standing near the door again. The stranger was looking directly at Emily. Ethan leaned toward Lily. Finish your pancakes, sweetheart. Why? Because I want you to stay close to me. His tone remained gentle, but his attention returned to the room. He did not know the secret. He did not know the name Harrington carried more power than most people could imagine. He only knew that a woman who looked lost was holding a photograph with trembling hands, and a waitress who seemed afraid was trying to protect her. Sometimes, Ethan believed, people did not need someone to rescue them. They needed someone willing to notice when something was not right. Emily folded the photograph and slipped it into her purse. Then she looked at Claire. I am going to the address. Claire nodded. Then do not go alone. Emily frowned. You just told me to go alone. Claire glanced toward Ethan and Lily. I changed my mind. Emily followed her gaze. Ethan looked up at that exact moment. Their eyes met. Neither knew why, but something in that brief silence felt like the beginning of a second chance. You cannot go to that address by yourself. Ethan's voice was calm, but Emily could hear the certainty in it. She looked at him across the diner table, surprised that he had even noticed. I do not remember asking for your help. Ethan gave a small nod. You did not. Lily sat beside him, carefully arranging blueberries into a smiley face on her pancake. Dad always helps people, she said. Ethan glanced at her. Sometimes I should learn to stop. Lily grinned. You never do. For the first time that afternoon, Emily almost smiled. Claire watched them quietly from behind the counter. The tension in her shoulders eased for only a moment. Ethan looked at Emily. You have an address you are afraid to visit. Someone has been watching you. And you are carrying a photograph that looks like it changed your whole day. Emily stared at him. You notice a lot. I have a daughter. Ethan looked at Lily. You learn to notice. There was no arrogance in his words. No attempt to become important. That was exactly what made Emily hesitate. She had spent years surrounded by people who wanted something from her family. Ethan did not even know who she was. My name is Emily, she said. Ethan nodded. Ethan, you know my name? Claire said it. Emily glanced toward the counter. Claire immediately looked away. Ethan lowered his voice. I am not asking questions. But if you are going somewhere tonight, I can drive you. Emily shook her head. I do not even know if I should trust you. Ethan accepted that without offense. You should not trust people just because they offer help. Emily looked at him. Then why are you offering? He paused. Because my daughter once needed someone to notice when she was scared. I remember what it felt like when nobody did. The words settled quietly between them. Emily looked down at her hands. For 6 years, she had believed that surviving meant keeping everyone at a distance. Trust had become expensive. Memories had become dangerous. Even kindness made her suspicious. But there was something different about Ethan. He did not push. He did not demand an explanation. He simply waited. Claire approached the table and placed the folded napkin beside Emily's purse. The address is less than 4 miles from here, she said. There is an old community center near the river. Your mother used to volunteer there. Emily looked at the handwriting again. Why would she leave something there? Claire whispered. Because she knew you might need it someday. Ethan stood and helped Lily into her coat. We can take you there. Emily hesitated. Then the diner door opened. The man in the blue coat stepped inside again. He looked around, but this time he did not glance at the counter. His eyes went directly to Emily. Ethan noticed. He gently moved Lily closer to himself. We should leave, he said. Claire nodded. Emily slipped the photograph into her purse. All right. They stepped outside into the cool Boston evening. Rain had nearly stopped, leaving the sidewalks shining beneath the streetlights. Ethan unlocked his older Ford Explorer and opened the back door for Lily. Emily stood beside him, uncertain. You do this often? She asked. Drive strangers to mysterious addresses? Ethan smiled faintly. Not usually. Lily leaned forward from the back seat. Dad, she is not a stranger anymore. She knows your name. Ethan laughed softly. Emily smiled despite herself. Then she looked back toward the diner. Claire was standing in the doorway, watching them. Her face carried one clear message. Go. Emily climbed into the passenger seat. Ethan started the engine. As they pulled away, she looked at the photograph one more time. Beneath the image was a handwritten date. It was dated 3 days after the world had officially declared her dead. The date on the photograph was impossible to ignore. 3 days after Emily Harrington had supposedly died, someone had taken her picture alive. Ethan drove through the quiet Boston streets, the windshield wipers moving slowly across the glass. Lily sat in the back seat, humming softly while watching the rain disappear from the windows. Emily stared at the photograph in her hands. Where were you 3 days after the accident? Ethan asked. She looked at him. I do not know. You do not remember? Not clearly. Ethan nodded and kept his eyes on the road. He did not press her. After a few seconds, Emily spoke again. I remember waking up somewhere unfamiliar. There was a woman beside me. She kept telling me to stay calm. Do you remember her name? No, Emily closed her eyes. I remember a piano. Ethan glanced at her. A piano? Yes. My mother used to play one. Her voice softened. That sound was the last thing I remember before everything went blank. The community center appeared at the end of a narrow street, an old brick building surrounded by maple trees and a small parking lot. Ethan pulled into an empty space. The sign above the entrance. Red Pine Street Community Center. Emily stared at it. I have never been here. Ethan turned off the engine. Maybe your mother did. They entered through the front doors. The building smelled faintly of old books, coffee, and polished wood. A receptionist looked up from behind a desk. Claire had called ahead. The woman nodded when Emily gave her name, then reached beneath the desk and brought out a small cardboard box. Your mother left this here 6 years ago, she said. Emily stared at the box. For me. She said that if Emily Harrington ever came back, it belonged to her. Emily took it carefully. Her hands trembled as she lifted the lid. Inside was a silver key, an old music program, and a handwritten letter. She unfolded the letter. The first line made her stop. My dearest Emily, if you are reading this, then you survived. Ethan saw the color leave her face. What does it say? Emily continued reading silently, her eyes moving slowly across the page. Then she whispered, My mother knew. The letter explained that Emily had discovered something about the Harrington family business shortly before the accident. Her mother had become concerned when Emily told her that financial records had disappeared from several company accounts. She had urged Emily to keep copies somewhere safe. Then came the sentence that changed everything. Your father is not the person you should fear. Emily looked up sharply. Ethan remained silent. She knew my father was not responsible, Emily said. Then who was she afraid of? The receptionist pointed toward the silver key. Your mother said you would know where it belonged. Emily turned the key over in her palm. A tiny number was engraved on the back. 12. Ethan looked toward the hallway. There are 12 rooms upstairs. Emily stood. Then we should find number 12. They walked quietly down the corridor. Lily followed close beside her father, holding his hand. At the end of the hall, Emily found a wooden door marked 12. She inserted the key. The lock clicked open. Inside was a small music room. An upright piano stood against the wall, covered with a white cloth. Emily stopped breathing for a moment. She knew that piano. It had belonged to her mother. Ethan remained by the doorway while Emily walked toward it. Beneath the piano bench was another envelope. Her name was written across the front in her mother's handwriting. Emily opened it with shaking fingers. Only one sentence was inside. If they told the world you were dead, then ask yourself who needed you to disappear. Emily slowly looked at Ethan. Outside the room, the hallway remained silent. Then, from somewhere downstairs, a familiar voice called her name. Emily. She turned toward the doorway. It was Richard Harrington, her father. Emily. Richard Harrington's voice was quiet, almost gentle, but the sound of her name seemed to freeze the entire room. Emily stood beside the piano, the letter still open in her hands. Ethan remained near the doorway, watching without speaking. Lily held tightly to his hand. Richard stopped several feet away. For a long moment, father and daughter simply looked at each other. 6 years had passed since Emily had last seen him. 6 years of headlines, unanswered questions, and a life built around a name that was supposed to belong to someone who no longer existed. Richard looked older now. His silver hair was neatly combed, his dark coat perfectly pressed, but his eyes carried something Emily had never seen in photographs. Weariness. How did you find me? Emily asked. Richard did not answer immediately. I have been looking for you for 6 years. Emily shook her head. You told the world I was dead. His expression tightened. I know. You let me disappear. I know. 3 short answers. No excuses. No anger. Only a silence that felt heavier than any explanation. Ethan watched carefully. He could see that Richard was not acting like a powerful businessman. He looked like a father standing in front of a daughter he had spent years believing he had lost. Emily held up the letter. My mother said you were not the person I should fear. Richard looked at the page, then closed his eyes for a moment. Your mother was right. Emily's voice trembled. Then tell me who I should fear. Richard looked toward the hallway. Not here. Ethan stepped forward. If she is staying, I am. Staying. Richard studied him. And you are? Ethan Carter. Why are you involved? Ethan glanced at Emily. Because she should not have to face this alone. Richard seemed surprised. Then he nodded slowly. You are a good man, Mr. Carter. Ethan said nothing. He did not need the compliment. Richard walked toward the piano and gently lifted the white cloth covering it. Beneath the keys was a small compartment Emily had never noticed. He opened it and removed a sealed envelope. Your mother gave me this the week before she died, he said. Emily stared at it. Why did you never give it to me? Richard looked at her. Because I did not know whether giving it to you would put you in greater danger. Emily's eyes narrowed. You knew I was alive. Richard paused. That silence was answer enough. Yes, he said. Emily took a slow breath. How long? Since the night of the accident. The room seemed to become smaller. Ethan looked at Richard, then at Emily. Richard continued. The vehicle was found. Your personal belongings were found. The authorities believe the evidence was enough. But you did not. No, why? Richard's voice softened. Because a father knows his daughter's handwriting. And the letter I received after your disappearance was written by you. Emily stared at him. What letter? Richard handed her the envelope. The one you sent me 3 days after everyone believed you were gone. Emily opened it. Inside was a single page. I am alive. Do not look for me. Trust no one. Emily read the sentence twice. Then she looked at her father. I wrote this. Richard nodded. Yes. Ethan stepped closer. Then why would she tell you not to look for her? Richard looked toward the old piano. Because someone had convinced her that coming home would put everyone she loved at risk. Emily lowered the letter. Who? Richard finally met her eyes. My brother, Thomas. The name hung in the quiet room. And for the first time, Emily understood that the mystery was not about why she had disappeared. It was about who had needed the world to believe she was gone. Thomas. Emily repeated the name quietly, as if saying it aloud might make the pieces of her memory fall into place. Richard nodded. My younger brother. He handled several parts of the company while I was focused on expanding the business. Emily looked down at the letter from 6 years ago. Then why would I tell you not to look for me? Richard took a slow breath. Because Thomas had already convinced you that someone inside the company was watching you. Ethan folded his arms. What did she discover? Richard looked at him, then at Emily. Financial transfers. Accounts that did not belong where they were supposed to belong. Millions of dollars moved through companies that existed only on paper. Emily closed her eyes. A memory surfaced. Numbers on a computer screen. Her mother standing behind her. A quiet warning to stop asking questions. Then a voice saying, Emily, you need to leave this alone. She opened her eyes. Thomas said that. Richard nodded. He was the one who told you the company was too complicated for you to understand. Emily shook her head. I remember now. I trusted him. Her father looked down. So did I. 3 words. Then silence. The old piano seemed to fill the room, even though no one touched it. Ethan noticed Emily's hands trembling and quietly moved a chair toward her. Sit down. She did. Lily sat beside her father, watching Emily with the innocent concern only a child could show. Are you sad? Lily asked. Emily managed a small smile. A little. Lily nodded as if that answer made perfect sense. My dad says being sad is allowed. Ethan gave his daughter a gentle look. I do say that. Emily smiled again. For a brief moment, the mystery became something simpler. A father, a daughter, a child who did not know how complicated the world could become. Richard watched them and seemed to understand something. Emily, he said, there is something else you need to know. She looked up. After your disappearance, Thomas took control of several family assets. He told the board that you were gone and that I was too emotionally affected to manage everything alone. Emily's expression changed. And you let him? I had no choice. You are Richard Harrington. Her voice sharpened. You have spent your entire life making impossible things happen. Richard lowered his eyes. Money can solve many problems. It cannot solve fear. And it cannot bring back trust once it is gone. Ethan looked at him with quiet understanding. Richard continued. I spent 6 years trying to find proof that you were alive without revealing that I knew. Every person I trusted seemed to know more than they admitted. Emily thought of Claire. Claire knew. Yes. Did you know she worked at the diner? Richard shook his head. I did not know where she was until today. Emily stared at him. Then how did you find me? Richard looked toward the hallway. Someone sent me a message this morning. Who? He hesitated. An anonymous source. Ethan immediately noticed the uncertainty in his expression. What did the message say? Richard reached into his coat and removed his phone. He showed them a single sentence. She is at Pine Street. Emily felt her heart sink. Someone knew I was coming here. Richard nodded. And that means someone knew before we did. Ethan looked at Emily, then at Lily. We should leave. This time, no one argued. They walked downstairs together, but before Emily reached the front doors, Claire appeared from the hallway, breathless and pale. She looked at Richard, then Emily, and finally Ethan. You cannot go back to the diner, she whispered. Why? Emily asked. Claire swallowed. Because someone left a message for you. What message? Claire looked directly into Emily's eyes. They know you remember. They know you remember. Claire's words seemed to remain in the hallway long after she stopped speaking. Emily looked at her father. Richard looked at Ethan. No one moved for several seconds. Then Lily quietly asked, Dad, are we going home? Ethan crouched beside her. Not yet, sweetheart. His voice stayed calm. We have somewhere safer to be. Richard nodded toward a side entrance. There is a private room upstairs. We can think there. Claire followed them, locking the door behind her. Inside, the room was small and warm, with 2 chairs, a wooden table, and an old lamp casting a soft circle of light across the floor. Emily sat down and placed the letters in front of her. I remember something, she said. The night before the accident, my mother asked me to meet her here. Claire looked surprised. Here. Emily nodded. She said she had found something. Something that could change everything. Richard closed his eyes. She never told me. Emily looked at him. Maybe she was trying to protect you too. Ethan remained near the window, listening quietly. He noticed the room had only one entrance. He also noticed something else. A small envelope sat beneath the lamp. Was that there before? He asked. Everyone turned. Claire shook her head. No. Emily reached for it, then stopped. Her father stepped closer. Do not open it yet. Ethan looked at the envelope. Why not? Richard answered softly. Because we already know someone wants us to find things. Emily stared at the envelope. Then how do we know what is real? Ethan walked to the table. We do not. We check. He picked up the old music program from the box. This has a date. He compared it with the letter. The dates match. Claire leaned closer. What does that mean? It means whoever left this knew about the box. Emily looked at the envelope again. Maybe my mother left it. Richard shook his head. Your mother always used blue ink. Emily turned the envelope over. The writing was black. A quiet silence followed. Then Ethan noticed something written on the back. 3 words. Room 12 again. Claire whispered. That is impossible. Emily looked at her. Why? Claire pointed toward the door. Because there was never supposed to be another room 12. Richard frowned. What are you talking about? Claire explained that the community center had been renovated years earlier. The old music room had once been part of a private storage wing, but the room numbers had been changed after the renovation. The number 12 had disappeared from the official floor plan. Emily slowly stood. Then why would someone write it? Ethan looked at Richard. Maybe they want us to look for something that was removed from the building. Richard nodded. There is another possibility. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an old key. Emily stared at it. Where did you get that? Your mother gave it to me. He placed it beside the silver key from the box. They looked almost identical, except for one small difference. The silver key carried the number 12. Richard's key carried the number 13. Claire stepped back. There was a room 13 too. Emily looked between them. Where? Claire answered quietly. Beneath the old auditorium. Ethan looked at Lily. Stay with Claire. Lily nodded. Okay. Emily moved toward the hallway with her father and Ethan. But before they reached the stairs, Richard stopped. Emily. She turned. Whatever we find down there, remember one thing. His voice softened. You do not have to face it alone. Emily looked at Ethan, then at Claire, then back at her father. For 6 years, she had believed that survival meant walking alone. Now 3 people were standing beside her for reasons that had nothing to do with money. They descended the stairs slowly. At the bottom was an old wooden door covered by years of dust. Richard inserted the key. The lock turned. The door opened into a narrow room filled with boxes, old records, and forgotten photographs. Emily stepped inside. On the far wall was a single-framed picture. It showed her mother, Claire, Richard, and a much younger Emily standing together outside Harrington Manor. But there was someone else in the photograph. A man standing several feet behind them. Emily stared at his face. Richard stopped beside her. That is Thomas. Emily looked closer. Then her breath caught. Thomas was not alone. Beside him stood the same woman Emily remembered from the night she disappeared. Emily stared at the photograph, unable to look away. That is the woman, she whispered. Richard stepped closer. Are you certain? Emily nodded. She was beside me the night everything disappeared. Claire looked at the picture and covered her mouth. I know her. Ethan turned toward her. Who is she? Claire took a slow breath. Her name is Margaret Cole. She worked for your family for almost 20 years. Richard's expression changed. Margaret was your mother's assistant. Emily looked again at the photograph. A memory returned, faint at first, then clearer. Margaret standing beside her mother. Margaret holding an umbrella. Margaret telling Emily to trust her. Then another memory surfaced. A quiet hallway. A closed door. Her mother whispering, "Do not tell Margaret anything." Emily stepped back. My mother stopped trusting her. Richard nodded slowly. I remember. Ethan looked at the photograph. Then why was she with Thomas? Richard did not answer. He walked to an old cabinet and opened a drawer filled with documents. Because Thomas and Margaret were both involved in the same financial accounts. Emily looked at him. You knew? I suspected. I did not have proof. Claire pointed toward the photograph. There is something else. She touched the corner of the frame. Look at the date. Emily leaned closer. The photograph had been taken 7 years ago, 1 year before the accident. On the back was a handwritten note from her mother. The people I trust are fewer than you think. Emily felt a quiet sadness settle over her. Her mother had known. She had seen the warning signs long before anyone else. Why did she not tell me? Emily asked. Richard answered softly. Because she wanted you to have one more ordinary year. Ethan looked at Emily. Your mother was trying to protect you. Emily nodded, but another question remained. What happened after the accident? Richard opened another folder. Inside were copies of hotel records, travel receipts, and old community center documents. You were taken to a small medical clinic outside Portland, Maine. Emily looked stunned. Maine? Yes. You had no identification. You were confused. A nurse contacted your mother's friend, who had been told to help you if anything happened. Claire stepped closer. That friend was me. Emily turned toward her. You knew where I was? Claire nodded. For a short time. Then someone found out. I was told to stay silent. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Why did you never come to me? Claire looked down. Because I was afraid that one wrong choice would bring the whole secret back to you. Ethan spoke quietly. And today you decided silence was no longer enough. Claire nodded. I saw her face and realized 6 years was long enough. Richard closed the folder. There is one final piece. He pulled out a small memory card sealed inside an envelope. Your mother left this with the community center. Emily looked at it. What is on it? Richard answered. A recording. They found an old computer in the room and inserted the card. After a moment, the screen came alive. Emily's mother appeared, seated at the same piano upstairs. Her voice was soft and steady. Emily, if you are watching this, then you have survived something I prayed you would survive. Do not blame your father. Do not blame yourself. The truth is bigger than our family. Emily reached for Ethan's hand without thinking. He let her hold it. On the screen, her mother continued. There is one person who can prove everything. You knew him when you were a child. His name is Daniel Brooks. Richard looked at Emily. I know that name. Claire whispered. So do I. The recording ended. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Ethan noticed a final line appearing beneath the video. It was not part of the recording. Someone had added it afterward. If you found this, Emily, you are already too late. Emily looked at the others. This time, she did not look afraid. She looked ready. 6 years ago, she had disappeared because she believed the truth would destroy everyone she loved. Now the truth was finally coming home.